Okay, so well, we're waiting for everybody to join up. We have a hair twirler. Um, in the chat, I'm going to send you the, what do you call it? The class survey. So if you could, take a few minutes and fill it in, I do appreciate your feedback. So let me just get that going. And I wore this especially for you guys. It's a little red snowman tie. You're going to miss the corny jokes. Maybe not. For those of you that are just connecting, in the chat, there's the URL for the course evaluation, please. You missed the dueling cellos in the beginning. That was pretty damn cool, I think. Levi, with that smile on, you look like you're up to mischief.
Always up to mischief.
Would 5 more minutes give everybody enough time, or is that rushing? Oh, Isa, you need my ice cold coffee. You look tired. I just saw that yawn.
It's 5 a.m. No, not 3 a.m. over here, so I'm kind of
Oh.
tired.
God. I'm gonna send you brain waves of energy.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you attending. That says a lot about you. Thank you. So again, for late attendees, there's in the chat, there's the course evaluation. If you can, do it, and maybe at 5:12, I'll start the lecture. Sahil, maybe you should share with me your tunes. Obviously, I like them.
Oh no, I'm just super hyper right now because I just had a cup of coffee.
Oh, I've got a Tolerant cold brew. But I think I'm going to send it to Isa. Okay, what I did for everybody, and hopefully you can finish up and listen at the same time. I took a Xerox copy or whatever of the concepts, terms at the end of each chapter that's going to be on the final, and I posted the document to the resources folder, okay? I know that some of you are using the ebook, and I realize that that's kind of a challenge, and so this should help you out. What I've also done is gone through each of them, and when you convert it from a PDF scan to Word, it doesn't come in the greatest. But that being said, I crossed out terms that you don't need to focus in on. So that again focuses some of your studying. And I'll take your pleasure, but I thought what I would do is the speed dating and kind of go through a couple of the key ones, unless people have very specific questions, and I can do it either way. So would the majority like me to do the glossary like I did for the midterm, or just do questions and answers as they come up? I thought, excuse me?
I just said speed dating.
At my age, there's no such thing as speed dating. It's like, but okay. So chapter 5, right? The reason why this is included in the final is because a lot of the concepts here get repeated in further chapters, right? And we had some access homework and some other homework that was due kind of after the midterm. So we, the teaching team, thought this was a good point to start. And most of you have really good understanding of the database concepts, right? So if I go through this list, I'm not going to go through each of these. Oh, you can mark off ACID. We're not going to focus in on. So access is pretty easy, right? It's a single user database. You know, attributes apply to an ERD, and it's like nouns based on a particular theme. Students, so last name, first name, those type of things, right? We don't need, and I'll repost, so you don't have to worry. We don't need bit and byte. I mean, it's kind of like crazy. Columns are really fields in a table. An attribute equals a field, right? When you convert it over from a database design. Crow's feet indicates the type of relationship, and you know that you need a minimum and maximum on every end of it, right? One and only one and many, 0 or 1, those type of things. Data integrity problem. It's when you have a field in the database and you have multiple values for that field and they disagree. Okay, so example, I've put in customer last name, first name, and street address. They've done some sort of transaction. I'm going to add a new record, but I mistype the last name. And so now for that customer, DeFronzo, I have 2 records. So it's a data integrity, right? There's not a join between that information. Okay. I think you all know what a data model is, right? You need to do that as the blueprint before you get into a database design. Database, for the most part, we talk about a relational database, which means a table to table relationship based on primary and foreign keys. Database administration, that's pretty easy. It's the task to keep your database clean, normalized, established. Database application, we tend to focus in on Microsoft Access, but we talked a little bit about Oracle. So it's really the software. MySQL is the most common in use, and that tends to be open source. William, if you can do in the chat the evaluation for the course while we're going through this, that would be appreciated. I've posted the glossary, and I'm kind of going through some of the concepts. Chapter 5 is kind of like a quick review.
Oh, Professor, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so for data integrity issues, is that, can you also say it's a combination of both data duplication and data inconsistency problems? Or
That
no?
would be a good way to define it, yes.
Okay. And also, sorry to interject, but my second question is like, do we have to know the major ERP vendors in chapter 6, I believe?
I haven't gotten there yet, no.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you though.
Stop drinking that coffee. DB2 is just an example of a database, and I'm going to X that one out. I finished the exam, so I know it's on there. An entity, you guys know what an ER data model is. Lost update problem. Anybody know what that is? So you guys sometimes experience that in Google Sheets. Let's say you have, a team and you're all accessing the same spreadsheet and you're updating information. Well, only one person can enter information at a time, right? So those other updates, if it was to the same field, would not be registered. So it's 2 or more people going after a field with an update, and only one is going to register. And that's the problem with Microsoft Access, that it's a single user database, and that's why you need something more powerful. Jason?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna answer the question. It's kind of like when you have like someone checking out, but another person checks out with you, and you leave that screen idle. So they take the they take the item and it's out of stock, but it doesn't update for you. And when you try to buy it, you can't get it anymore because
It's frozen.
the web, yeah, if it's frozen and there's no more inventory anymore.
Yep, good example. Okay, many to many. I'm thinking the rest of these are pretty easy. Oh, who can give me an example of normalization? So when you're converting from an ERD to a database design, right? It's making sure that your tables have only one theme. So in your customer table, you're not going to want to have purchase information, right? That's clearly going to be a second table. There'll be a relationship through the foreign key, but normalization means you clean up your table so they only have one theme, right? And if you think about it like an entity, it makes sense. And so if you go back to some of your homeworks where I, gave you some of my thoughts, you combined in one entity, or when you convert it to a database design, attributes or fields that were really part of another theme, right? So normalization means you want to focus in on just that thing. So you create a new table for unique fields and you join them through your primary and foreign keys. Sometimes people get a little bit confused on SQL Server and the structured query language. So MySQL is a database product, right? It's open source. The language, like using COBOL, Fortran, R, MATLAB has theirs, is called SQL, and that's how you ask questions to the database, right? So one is the database structure, and the other one is what they call a query, but the questioning language, how you structure your requests. Okay. Chapter 6. Before I move on, anything on chapter 5? Again, that for most part, you handle this pretty well. Okay. Chapter 6. So there's a difference between business process re-engineering and business process mapping. So make sure you understand those terms, right? Business process mapping means you're documenting the current situation, and it's a framework, it's a set of tools, right? You identify your swim lanes, your actors, your processes, and your decisions. You may or may not identify friction points. Business process re-engineering is you look at all of the steps that are required to complete a task or an activity, such as student payroll. And you look at ways in which you can improve that. They're similar, but there's clearly a difference, right? One is a continuous improvement, and the other one is a framework or a methodology or an approach to documenting workflow, right? Customer life cycle management, right? That's everything from lead generation or your marketing. And if you did the Salesforce, that would make sense, all the way through what is called a churn. Anybody know what a churn is?
Is churn like the last part of the customer life cycle, like the lost churn part where like,
Yes.
I guess, yeah, you may lose customers or you may try to retain customers.
Right, and the whole goal there, right, is to retain. So it's the full, like from birth to death of a customer. That's the customer life cycle. Customer relationship management refers to software that's used to manage the life cycle from lead generation, right, interest into a product or service, all the way through to, you know, um, deciding to drop off or end the service. Okay. Distributed systems, it sounds like a complicated term, but it really isn't. It just means that for a particular need, let's say enterprise resource planning, I'm going to have maybe a common database, but I might use one vendor's product for my financial modules or applications like payroll, accounts payable, general ledger, chart of accounts. And I might use Salesforce for my customer relationship management. And so I have what's called a distributed, meaning many vendors to provide the systems that I need. And how I get them to talk to each other, right? We've used the term before is API, automated process interface, or you can use service-oriented architecture, which is kind of like a philosophy or an approach, right? It's standards so that your finance talks to your human resource system. Why? Well, my human resource system, I have my list of employees and their BUIDs, but they're getting paid out of the finance system. So I want to make sure that the two systems talk, right? So distributed, you're using many to serve one. Enterprise application integration also is a technique that's used to make all of your systems talk, right? And so, like, it's just a fancy word um, that really means API and SOA. So they're all can be used interchangeable for us. Okay, so don't get super confused on that. It's just a way for various products to talk together. And what you end up doing is you have this concept called middleware. You have a layer of software that sort of directs transactions between the two products, right? And you kind of use that today when you're using, the Google App Suite and you want to exchange information between, a text-based document and a spreadsheet-based document, right? There's a layer that allows that to happen. Enterprise information system is the term like Christianity. It means anything that's used by the corporation in most or all of its departments and divisions, right? And so it's made up of what we talk about, which is ERP, CRM, supply chain management. But here at BU would also include Blackboard, Questrom tools. It's all of the systems that we use in order to provide services to faculty, staff, and students, right? In a bank, it would be ERP and those type of things. But again, it would also more than likely be global custody systems. It would be, some sort of maybe investment banking. It would be stock market. Maybe it would be Bloomberg. So it's all the systems that are used by the corporation to meet a need. Any questions on those? Okay, good. Enterprise processes, right? And so those are like the business process mapping, right? It's the standard way we're going to do business across all parts of the organization, right? How are we going to hire an employee? How are we going to do annual reviews, provide merit, pay, how are we going to, what's our fiscal year? Is it July 1 to June 30th? Is it September 1st, right? So it's the processes that we have in place that are standardized across the organization. They feed an enterprise resource planning, right? So you buy a basic product, SAP, Oracle Financials, JD Edwards, and you have to set it up based on both the system and your processes. So you configure it, right? That's a key term. You configure it. You put in your values in the tables. Here's my chart of accounts. Here's my employee structure. Here's my department names and cost centers, right? So the book uses two terms to do that. And it comes up again in the SDLC chapter. It's called configuration and parameterization. Okay, you're putting in your values to set up the system. It's like filling in an HTML or a web form, right? It's drop down values, what makes sense for your organization. We talked about, horizontal and vertical applications. And so a functional application would be what? Horizontal or vertical? It would be more than likely vertical, right? For that company. So it's a very specific piece of software to meet a need. So here for learning management, we have a very specific product at Questrom. It's Questrom Tools. We don't allow any other product to be used, right? So it services, one aspect of your company. It could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be your finance, right? The book has so many different terms, but if you kind of group them together, it makes sense. Hybrid model. What does that mean?
Does that mean that you kind of source from the cloud, like a cloud vendor, while keeping like really private data like stored in-house?
Right. And again, that's a good way to look at it. So you might use software as a service, right? So you're using a vendor like Salesforce to do your customer relationship management, but you might have, a unique internal system and that you've used APIs to join the information, right? You might also use Oracle in the cloud, right? And again, you have some unique runs in your own operation and you join them, hybrid, right? You bring together two systems. Usually it's cloud service and something internal. Information silo is really important on the exam. And so I can give you that hint. And so it's pretty clear what it means, right? Not sharing of information. There's not a good database structure. You're making decisions, not necessarily in context of the whole organization. And that's what enterprise systems do, right? You have a standard set of databases and definitions that allow you to share information so that that customer ID is not lost. Like there's nothing worse than you calling up a support line, you give them your customer ID and they have no information about your product or your warranty. You get frustrated, right? Well, that's an information silo. And if they're using systems correctly, they should be able to pull up your record and say, oh, Jason, you purchased a vacuum cleaner for your mother on December 1st as a Christmas gift. Your warranty is still in effect. Is there a defect you'd like to report, right? Versus saying, Jason, I have no record of a purchase. We'll have to create a record for you, right? So you want different parts of the operation to share information so that it's more effective and efficient and it's good customer service. Inter-enterprise information systems. Anybody know what that is?
Isn't it information system that spans different organizations, like completely separate companies?
Yes. And it's really like what we talked about way back in, I think, chapter 4, maybe. It's like two companies intranet, but they're using a system, right? They're sharing a system in order to do order processing, supply chain management. It could be logistics or shipping and handling, right? So that's good. And then de facto, the processes would be, the workflow between the two organizations, right? There's a standard way of handling business that they both commonly share. And this is becoming, pretty big if you think about it, like Uber platform, right? If you want to be on Uber Eats and your restaurant, you want, your stuff to be delivered, more than likely, the Uber platform is actually serving as an inter-enterprise information system, right? It's going to have the restaurant's name, address, menu, pricing and the whole bit, correct? Or be able to accept the charges. So it's allowing multiple companies to use a system and talk together. Oh, what's a stored procedure? Think about it when you were in Microsoft Access, right? And if you remember one of the assignments, I wanted you to look at outliers on salaries versus performance rating, right? And so that query, you would store it, meaning keep it in memory, name it, and be able to run it every merit review cycle so you would get the results, right? All that is you take a program and you name it and store it so it can be used again, either inside another program or based on, certain dates or cycles, okay? That's is as easy as it gets. How about a trigger? Both of these are on the exam. So a trigger, right, is, again, it's going to be a program statement that gets executed based on a previous step, like I've logged in and I have authorization to delete a record, right? And so automatically it's going to update the database and it's going to put into the system the date, time, and maybe user ID. A trigger is a program that's based on either a delete, an insert, or an update of a record, right? So I have a new customer, they're in the system, and now lucky them or stupid them, they decided to get married, and so they're going to combine their names, right? And so once I've updated that, the trigger is going to be a stored procedure, right? That updates that last name combination throughout the system, right? So it's an action based on generally a delete, an insert, or an update of a record. Yes, Jason.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I was reading the textbook for this chapter, and it mentioned ERP solutions. Does that mean that is ERP solutions basically like CRM, BPR, BPM?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
So the book gets confusing. So enterprise is corporate systems in use, right? Enterprise resource planning is a subset of systems generally comprised of the finance, supply chain, and customer relationship management. sometimes English language stinks, right? We use similar terms with different definitions. I think the rest are fairly easy. Before I move on to the next chapter, any questions? Okay. Now, chapter 7, I'm expecting you all to get, or most of you to get all of those questions right, because more than half of the presentations dealt with subject matter from this particular chapter. And so I weighed a little heavier on some of these questions. One, to give you kind of a bonus, and two, to pick up on what you've already done, right? Because it's kind of like, this is the way of the world, right? Business intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's quite a few terms, and we can make them a little bit easier to remember. I'm not going to get overly sophisticated, right? I need you to know it kind of at the highest level. But 3D printing, I would assume that you know what that is. Who wants to give me a quick artificial intelligence definition? One of the teams? Nobody? Okay, well, so you're using various techniques, but programming to make a decision based on a series of either past patterns or algorithms or an inference on data that you've collected, right? So the first two are kind of easy. The inference, right? So you've stored all of this data, and to me, an inference is really a prediction. You're gonna say that based on spending patterns of customers in zip code 02215 for the last 3 years, I'm gonna predict that the spending pattern for the month of December is going to be X, right? So it's based on patterns, but you're coming out with kind of like a fact to be tested, right? Okay.
Professor,
Yes.
sorry, I just have a question. So what exactly is like the difference between AI and machine learning?
So machine learning is kind of the lower level. It's really based on patterns of existing data. AI is taking it to the next level. It's based on those patterns, is coming up with a new decision, right? So if I think about it, machine learning, I've collected all of this information on COVID vaccinations, right? And based on those patterns, I can do analytics and say, for this age group, the efficiency or efficacy is X, right? But it's based on my existing data and patterns. Or I can assume that based on where people are vaccinated, what I think the herd rate is or whatever. AI takes it to the next level and comes up with a new, like a human style decision based on reading that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I think you guys get augmented reality and VR pretty well. Chatbot you probably deal with, right? So is a chatbot AI or is it more machine learning? So in order to create a chatbot, you have to define what I would call like common questions and answers, right? And based on what the user puts in, hi, what are the requirements for the IS concentration? You get back an answer, right? So it's more than likely machine learning. For it to understand your sentence structure, so it comes up, is probably a little bit of AI. So it probably combines a little bit of both, right? Because everybody can ask a question in a different way, and it needs to know that that follows this tree more than, oh, you're not asking about, grad concentrations, you're asking about undergrad, you're asking about IS, not finance, or it's a joint or whatever. But you deal with those a lot, right? It just prompts you through a bunch of trees in order to get to the final answer. Sometimes they're pretty annoying, aren't they? And you probably deal with them too, even on voicemail. Like you call somebody and you want customer service, and it's press 9, for this, and then you have to answer the next question, and then you press 8, and then you put in the thing, and you get 7, 6, and you're like, oh, give me a human being. So they're still not that sophisticated. Computer-aided design, you guys know what that is. Our friends over in engineering use it to create, multidimensional models of physical items. Usually, it's buildings, pipelines, those type of things. Computer vision systems, pretty easy, right? It's going to be able to, it's going to see and detect and do something, right? So it's your eyes computerized, right? Oh, let's get rid of digital asset management systems. Again, I will repost after the class. Enterprise content management, that's a pretty easy one, right? So you have a library of all articles, PDFs, content for the Questrom School of Business, right? And it's kind of like a Wikipedia. So it's a structure and it's a workflow. Who can revise it? Who can archive it? How does it get approved? But it's the content that's needed that defines your policies, procedures, defines your terms and your sources for a business. Most places do not have that yet. This is a growing area because it's a lot of work, right? Okay, genetic algorithms. Anybody know what that is? So it's computer programs, right? That in concept kind of look like, cell mutations. They're able to find solutions to complex problems based on different feeds of information, right? So then, all right, give me some examples. Well, they do that a lot in engineering design, robotics, right? Automotive. So based on different patterns, let's say in the automotive design, how can I explain that? Okay, so I'm going to feed in the required manufacturing goods and services to make whatever the vehicle is, a Lamborghini, right? And based on sourcing and lead times, I'm going to anticipate when I can get to market. And it will change based on different feeds, right? So it's kind of like, a virus that moves around and says, oh, okay, this isn't the right feed because things have changed. Now what do I need to do? So it's a fairly sophisticated set of programs that allow you to go different paths to get to an answer. They use it a lot too and medical diagnostics, right? None of these are mutually exclusive. So they're using expert systems. I put in a bunch of information, but I can go off into different patterns based on what I've provided, right? Kind of like a molecule that sort of splits. We talked a little bit about an inference engine. And again, this chapter, the questions are more like your presentations. I'm not going to say, oh, here is blah, 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 blah. This would be a best example, or compare and contrast machine learning from AI, right? It's going to be very basic because we just touch on it, okay? Intelligent agents, what are they? And what's an example?
Siri.
Yep. And Alexa, right? So they're collecting data, but they sense it based on some sort of response from the human, right? And then they take an action. So my mother asked me the other day to set up Alexa because she wants holiday music, right? So, you know, Alexa, play holiday music from the 50s. And I was going out of my mind. But yeah, so, and then when I walk up to the device, it senses, it's like, hello, her name's Janet. Hello, Janet, what would you like? Right? So I always tell her to unplug it if she's not using it, because sometimes she swears and I don't want Alexa to take an action. But it's sensing based on, you know, human proximity, voice, touch, those type of things. Okay. What's a neural network? Okay, so again, all of these are computer programs or algorithms, right? And it's trying to mimic the brain activity. And so it's trying to create logic. It's trying to see relationships between lots of different data, right? And so it's posing different potential outcomes or options for you. The thing is, it's trying to simulate how a brain thinks, right? You get some sort of stimuli and then you're reacting to that. I think I'm going to change some of the questions on the exam based on the faces. Okay. I think that's pretty good for this chapter. Unsupervised data, right? It's a technique that's used in machine learning to find hidden patterns. A lot of these are techniques and they're really based on, when they say algorithms, I really think of them as computer programming with some pretty sophisticated, like what you would consider statistics, right? You're looking for, you know, standard deviations and regressions on steroids to look at patterns. So it has tons and tons and tons of data and you apply these programs to see what the outcome will end up being. All right. Chapter 8. Oh, I love chapter 8. Who doesn't? Agile versus Waterfall. Easy to remember. Waterfall is structured. It's one of the systems development lifecycle methodologies. You have to go completely through phase 1 before you can go into phase 2, before you go into phase 3, right? Agile, you're doing all of those phases in very short, what they call sprints, bite-sized pieces, right? So I want to automate student hiring, and that has lots of different potential processes, but I'm only going to do one piece first and get that into production, into use within a couple of weeks, right? Then I do the next piece, and then I do the next piece. Agile is a philosophy and a way of doing systems development. So you're constantly getting product out to your customers or to your users. An application, again, fancy word, right? So if I have an ERP, an application in that would be general ledger, right? It would be chart of accounts. It would be benefits, right? So it's that module, which is another term that can be used to support a business area. As is model, you guys know, it's business process mapping. It's today's workflow without interpretation. The to be is the proposed. In between, you're identifying friction points, right? Areas for improvement. Structured processes, you do business process mapping with. Dynamic processes, you cannot, right? Because you can't predict the various steps, like teaming, like brainstorming. So it's structured processes. A work breakdown structure is really for a project, and it's taking all of the tasks and defining it at a very discrete level so that you can begin to track it, right? I told you that several times this semester I'm implementing Salesforce in the online MBA program, community portal, and all this other stuff, right? The work breakdown structure for that project probably has 10,000 steps. And so we track against that. Some of those are critical path. What does that mean? I need to complete those generally by a certain time with certain resources before I can move on to the next, right? It's steps that are dependent on the next. So if I use a team room upgrade, let's say I was going to upgrade it, right? And I decided I wanted it to be available on smart devices, right? iPhone and Android. My critical path before I could release it to students to use would be to test the most common browsers in use and versions, right? Because until you guys can use it without error, I have to make sure it can meet, you know, these browser conditions or these OSs. How many of you, oh, you wouldn't be in SM131. How many of you got an email about ExamSoft this semester and said, hey, there's an issue with ExamSoft. Apple updated their OS and right now it's not recognizing it. So please don't update. Anybody get that email from a professor? Okay, Dan, thank you. Well, it's now addressed, but that critical path meant if they had done this correctly, they would have tested it with the most common browsers, right? And OSs, and they didn't. So they had to release what? A patch, right? A fix in order for it to work. Okay, so now you begin to see how these things sort of come together. COVID I left in there. It's kind of like the Bible for processes in IS. So you like change management, quality assurance, how to establish program libraries, looking at also controls with security, acceptable use policy. So it's a checklist that auditors use to see how well your organization is structured. Do you have a governance structure in place? Meaning, do I have my stakeholders involved in my decision making, right? Are there thresholds for approval? Over $25,000 requires, you know, the department chair to be involved. 50,000 requires the CIO, those type of things. So there are rules and procedures that govern how IT is going to operate. And if you follow those, you're actually really good, because usually companies come in that do the auditing, just go by this checklist. It's kind of like a recipe card, right? Let's see what else. I'm going to get rid of dichotomies of scale. Oops. It really, you know, it's a technique, but I don't think it's needed. Just-in-time design actually is the concept of agile development, right? You deliver what's needed right now, and it's a constant development process. So you're always modifying and enhancing those requirements, but you get that first form out to your end users. You get the first set of products listed in your inventory so that you can begin to open your store, right? Just in time means the basics needed to meet that request or business need. Okay. Parallel, phase, pilot, and plunged. You should know parallel, you're running two systems side by side, generally financial, right? You want the outcomes of the new system to equal the outcomes of the old system, right? If I'm running payroll and all my deductions, I want to make sure that when I report to the IRS from my new payroll system, it's doing it accurately. And so you run it for a month or a quarter, some sort of cycle, and then you say, okay, both systems are producing the same results. I now basically am going to plunge, meaning I'm going live, right? Plunge means there's a certain date that I make a decision. It's either direct, right? So as of September 1st, we're going to be off of Team Rooms and we're going to go with a new package. We're going to be off of Questrom Tools and we're going to go to Blackboard, right? You set a date and the old system is retired or archived. Phased means you're generally going to release some of the applications over a period of time. So I'm implementing a new financial management system. I might do it one of two ways. I might do it in parts of my organization, like Questrom versus the College of Engineering versus Sargent versus CGS, or I might implement accounts receivable in all of those colleges first. So it can be a phase in of an application or a phased in within your organization, right? A pilot, you guys do that quite a bit. You get a trial run of the software and then you make a decision. Does it really meet your business, right? And so you're going to measure it against some definition. Schedule feasibility is not a fancy term, right? It really feeds into your work breakdown structure, and you look at your critical path analysis. Sorry about that. So you're determining, when best to implement based on resource constraints, calendar. So I would this is a good example. So I'm converting all of Questrom for real to the BU Zoom account at the end of the semester. Why? We were the first to use it, so we were kind of ahead of the pack, but especially you undergrads, you're taking classes all around the school. I want to make sure it's the same experience. And then you don't have to go to my media. Sometimes we can just give you the link, right? But there's two different accounts, so we're going to merge them. Schedule feasibility says I have to make sure that that date that I select, there can't be any users on the system because I'm going to disconnect you, right? So I'm going to do it during intersession. I think I'm doing it on December 29th, right? Critical path says, what do I need to have in place in order to do that? I have to set up test accounts. I have to make sure existing URLs are moved over for, ongoing meetings. It acknowledges, BUID and names and all of those things, right? So that's how it kind of fits together. All right. In the security chapter, there's lots and lots and lots of terms, but to me, I don't think they're necessarily that difficult. So acceptable use policy, you sign it, right? How you're going to use the computer or assets for an organization. So sometimes you're prevented from BYOD. I'm sorry, I keep on getting text. All right. Anti-malware software, just remember malware, right, is uninvited cookies or software that's been dropped on your device computer without your knowledge, right? And the whole goal is to do something bad, right? It could eventually be a virus. It could detect your settings. It could take over your camera. So it's, software that you did not ask for, right? What are some of the other tough ones here? Computer forensics. Oh. So what's the difference between a distributed denial of service attack and a denial of service attack, right? Matthew?
Isn't that whether it's one computer or multiple computers? So if it's like
Yeah.
a botnet of multiple computers, then it's distributed.
Yes. And that's how simple it is, right? One versus many. So I'm going to bring down a server that hosts Questrom tools in Questrom School of Business, or I'm going to bring down all of 111 Covington Street where Central BU has all of their servers, right? What's the difference between disaster recovery planning and business continuity? So remember, business continuity is not just computer systems, but how you're going to keep critical functions of your business running should you have a hurricane, loss of power, right? So it's more than computer systems. It's people and processes. So yeah, I can have a computer system, but if I don't define who is on the critical call list to do buying, payroll, um, um, food ordering, if it's here at BU, so that people in the dorms have their food, right? So it's larger than just a computer system. The disaster recovery plan really reflects an outage of either your computer center or a particular server. How fast can you get back up and running with an alternative resource, right? I told you I use Amazon 3 cloud, predominantly infrastructure as a service. If I lost the hosted Questrom tools within minutes, I can point you over to Amazon 3. So you would lose very little work. Okay. Oh, I love this evil twin, right? What is it? Matthew?
I think that one's like the multiple access points where one is named to appear like another, so that somebody might inadvertently connect and then, get their information taken.
Yes. And so you're at Logan Airport, you're flying out, you decide to use, the public network. And so you sign on, but actually it's not the free Wi-Fi. It's, a hosted site with the aim of getting your information. So it looks like it's correct, but it's not. It happens a lot in public places. You're in Starbucks, you think you're using the cafe network, but I'm sitting there and guess what? I have the sophistication to point your request to me. And so now you're on my network without your knowledge, right? That's SQL Twin. Fault tolerant computer systems, really easy. So whether it's at the PC level or a server, you have a hardware failure, right? Your disk drive fails, right? It's not reading. All that fault tolerant means is if that failure occurs, there's spare drives in the system so that it can continue to operate until it's repaired, right? Firewall detects, what's coming in and going out. So you set up the policy. Intrusion detection systems, they go hand in hand with like sniffing, right? So sniffing, I'm, corrupt and I'm wrote a program. And so I'm looking at holes in various firewalls here at BU. And so I'm just looking for that activity, right? Sniffing is looking for network activity. I'm looking for transactions and patterns, right? Then I attempt to make a break-in. An intrusion detection system is going to say, somebody is sending transactions too often to this IP address or to this aspect of the firewall, and it sends me an alarm, right? Sorry, Jason, I know it's not exciting. But it's an alarm system, right? And it works hand in hand with unified threat management, which is what? You yawned again, Jason. Matt, what's unified threat management?
I do not remember.
Okay. It's, again, it's like religion, right? So it's an approach where you're bringing together various appliances, software, and strategies to prevent a break-in. So it's looking at intrusion detection systems, virusware, firewalls, smart cards. It's everything. So it's an approach to keep your organization or company safe. Fishing versus farming. They're very similar, I have to say. So I don't know if I gave you this example before, but in, I don't know, maybe about 20 something years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. So in the States, they used to have this program, Bring Your Twerp to Work Day, bring your kid to work. And so you shadowed your parent and you saw what they did, right? So I'm like, oh, I got all these kids and I'm going to open up our computer lab and, I'll have some games for them to play and we'll do a little bit of like history and the whole bit, right? I'm teacher. So I said, the first thing we're going to go do is thewhitehouse.org. Well, unfortunately, a couple of kids typed it in wrong, and rather than going to the United States White House website, they actually went to a porn site. And so that's farming, right? I'm directing you to an incorrect site with the goal of trying to collect some information, right? Well, in that particular case, the kids didn't say anything, and I'm walking around, and all of a sudden I'm seeing the stuff on the screen, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, like shut down. Well, I got called into the executive director's office, and parents were like bull with me. Oh, you corrupted my child. They'll never be. I'm like, well, they were kind of like scamming through this stuff. I don't know if I corrupted them, but anyways, so that's farming, right? Versus phishing. That's a true story. I've had lots of stories that you guys, oh, you don't know. Phishing, though, generally is through an email, right? I'm trying to get you to respond to something because I really want your identity or your personal information, right? So one is directing to what looks like the correct website and it's not. So how many of you right now are looking up the White House misspellings, you pervs, versus, you know, an attachment in an email, right? Okay, well, at least I woke you up. Sniffer, spoofing, spyware, SQL injection, right? Nothing fancy there. So if my database or application allows SQL to be used as a query language, then it's really a bad program that's using SQL, right? So I've written a query that's going to destroy the database or change the data, right? So I understand how to do it, and it corrupts my system. Two-factor you guys get. War driving is easy. Oh, 0-day vulnerabilities. This is important. So it's a security flaw that is known, but there's not a patch for it as of yet. And you've got these jerks out there that are going to exploit it, right? So, you know, with Safari, there's a known leak for a particular set of transactions, but the vendor, Apple, doesn't know what to do or how to fix it. And so it becomes now common knowledge, and hackers are exploiting it. So 0-day is known issues without a fix. And that's the glossary. So the reason why I did this, and I will repost it, because I made a couple of changes, and I'll go through it one last time. Again, I think if you have the ebook, it's really tough having the terms. And so now you can take it and maybe sketch a couple of notes. Or more importantly, I actually give you the page of the book, right? So I just copied it exactly. The exam is 50 questions. I made them shorter in length than what was on the midterm to reflect both the time it takes to read and latency based on different networks. There's some that are more than 2 sentences, but not all. I would say 60% clearly are 2 sentences. Okay. My section, I have the smartest, so I'm thinking you guys are going to do really, really good. But I will hold office hours tomorrow, which is Friday, so anybody can pop in. I'll announce office hours for Monday because it's study period. again, not required. I'll probably do it a little bit late so I can capture both international and local. And then that'll be it for the week unless you email me questions, because now you're in exams and I don't want to stress you out. No stress. Let me share. So, 1 second before you all. Hold on. The end of the class. You guys must have heard this before, right?
I'm not sure we can hear it.
Oh. Really?
You have to share your computer
Yes.
audio.
Yeah, I mean the cello video also like is mute. Like at the beginning.
All right. Let's see. Can you hear it now? No?
No, not yet.
How do I do that? Oh, this was my graduation song from high school. No, maybe college. How do I get the sound?
Did you try resharing it? Like if you stop the share and then share it again with the computer sound or something like that.
No?
What are your audio preferences near the mute button in the arrow there?
Did you hit optimize sound? I forgot exactly what the words are, but when you're sharing the screen, there's on the very bottom, there should be like a thing to check off that says like optimize sound or something for sharing.
Let me see one more time. No. So I'm at my desk and I'm not sure why, but anyways, it's Cool in the Gang. It's called Celebration. It's a disco song from, was it the late 70s, early 80s? But it's supposed to make you feel good. I wish I could play it. Oh well. Anyways, truly, all bullshit aside, it's been my honor to work with you this semester. I hope, again, regardless of your grade, if you need anything from me in the future, you reach out. I'm here, right? We're all family. Some of you I do hope will become IS concentrators. And whether you get an A or a B in the class, that should not dictate whether IS is of interest, because survey courses generally are harder, right? Because we're throwing a bunch of crap at you so that we get to some common language. The upper level IS courses are much more targeted and focused. So it's one topic basically for the whole course, right? But again, it doesn't matter to me. I will help anybody that needs help in the future. So good luck on your study period. I'll repost the glossary and I'll post Monday's office hours. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you.
Oh, you
Thank
can call me Greg from now on too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, bye. Jasmine, you got a question?
Yeah, so when he was talking about distributed attack or something, and he said it was like from one computer versus many computers. Is that from one computer, or like that it only like affects one computer?
The outcome is to affect one computer, which is denial of service, or all computers in the network, which is a distributed.
Okay, but it doesn't matter like where it comes from.
No.
Okay. And how like specific do we have to be, like maybe in short answers or something? Because I still don't know what a server is, but like if I just say like it attacks the server.
There's no short answers. It's all multiple choice.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. And I have something cool to show you.
oh,
I got a job and I work in technology.
congratulations. If you don't mind me using this parental expression, very proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been a semester. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, but again, if you have any questions in between, right? Whether you can show up at office hours or not, doesn't matter. Just email me. I'll try to group them if I think, they make sense for the whole class, because something is generally not understood. I will put out an email. I'll try not to do it too often because I don't want to stress people out. But yeah, I'm here for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good looking. What's up?
Ryan, I believe that's you.
No, I was waiting for one of you to say.
Yeah, I know this.
Saying. Neither one.
You go first. You go first.
Oh, never mind. You can go first. Like.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Professor. So I was a little bit confused when you were explaining stored procedure. From my knowledge, it's like a computer program used in large organizational databases that like just I guess is used in regular business. So would an example of it be like, because I think I missed your example because of the audio quality, but in my, ooh, sorry, I'm like extremely caffeinated right now. But in my view of how I view the term, anyway, is it like something like, for example, if for Amazon, right, if they run out of inventory for a specific item, they have to display out of stock. Would that be a stored procedure?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Just making sure. Thank you. That's all my questions.
I'm expecting an A.
Hopefully. Oh wait, also, did you call me in class? I think. I think you said my name, right?
Today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.